And now we're being joined by Mr. Sergej Sumlenny, Director, European Resilience Initiative Center. Good morning, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having invited me today.
So Macron has been to Germany on many occasions, but this is the first state visit of a French president to Germany in 24 years. The last time it was Jacques Chirac. Why now, and why this fanfare? Why this state visit of all things?
Well, indeed, President Macron has visited Germany several times, and on one of occasions he even held his speech at the German Bundestag in German language. And his German was of a very high level, which has created a very positive impression in Germany. But you're right, this visit is special, and we have a challenge now in Europe, which cannot be solved fast and efficient if countries like France and Germany do not cooperate and do not act correctly and right. And we know that both France and Germany were pretty reluctant in the first months of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Germany is still pretty reluctant and in front of the European elections on the 9th of June and later German Bundestag election, which are set for September 25. Germany's Chancellor Scholz is demonstrating even more reluctancy and even more of what he calls a clever approach, but many neighbors from East and West say that it's not the best idea to act. Now French influence is required to correct this course of Germany, and President Macron has demonstrated his pretty straightforward approach to Russia's invasion during the last months. And I think that the topics which also you at tvpworld raise pretty often, like creation of a common air defense system in Europe, creation of a common arms procurement system in Europe, and other strengthening European defense capacities will be the topics.
And now we are perhaps deepening now the conversation on especially now the defense capabilities. I mean, let's face it, recently France and Germany did not see eye to eye. I feel like that will be now an understatement. And do you think that now perhaps Emmanuel Macron is able to influence now Chancellor Scholz effectively? And do you think that this visit might influence future collaborative projects, especially when it comes to defense in the future, or rather they will still stay apart and this is just a mere, let's say, diplomatic visit as such?
Well, President Macron has his own interests, which are not always in harmony with interests of Europe, let me say. Like we know, he has his deep connections to China. He visited China recently and brought pretty much promises to Chinese leadership regarding further economic cooperation with Europe and deepening economic cooperation with Europe. What many say is dangerous for Europe because it increases our dependency on authoritarian China. President Macron also stays in, he supports reasonably the interest of French arms producers, and his position has blocked several times increased cooperation of European arms producers, and that is all known. But on another hand, President Macron has demonstrated a lot of leadership in fighting Russia's aggression back. He was one of the first who provided Ukraine with cruise missiles, Scalp. He was the first who announced from the leaders of the Western countries to provide Ukraine with tanks, which was a very strong argument in discussion about Germany's Leopard 2 tanks for Ukraine. Now he is the first leader of the Western countries who openly supports the idea of sending, if necessary, NATO troops to Ukraine. So he is like no politician is a saint person who does all things right, but there are definitely a lot of things which President Macron is doing right regarding creating a common defense strategy for Europe. And here, the last thing I wanted to stress is it is also in strategic interest of France, which is in favor of creating what they call a strategic autonomy of the European Union, more decision being taken inside of Europe, not on the NATO level, but on the level of European countries. And that is what he likes, obviously, more European decision on European strategic and defense issues. And that is what he will probably try to push here in Berlin.
Right. So, what about some of the other topics from the inaugural speeches that were said last night? Right. I've heard about the sort of environment, the Green Deal, cooperation in that realm. That's one thing. But another thing that has been on my mind is the upcoming European Parliament elections, and of course the rise of far right. Of course, we have Marine Le Pen in Germany, in France, and we also have the AfD in Germany. Do you think that some of these issues could also be the topics?
Of course, these are topics which are like there's consensus that these topics demonstrate a threat for European stability. And here, once again, we have pretty different approach from Germany and from France on, for example, the topics of environment. France is setting a lot on nuclear energy, and Germany has abandoned nuclear energy several years ago. And from the French perspective, nuclear power stations are one of key elements of creating sustainable supply of energy, and that was France's position, which led to the fact that the European Union names nuclear energy as one of green energies, which makes Germans absolutely unhappy. So here we have like another topic for discussion. But regarding the European elections and the rise of far right, you're absolutely right. It is indeed a problem. We have elections on the 9th of June in several weeks, and in Germany recently we have like waves of far right incidents, including glorification of like anti-constitutional behavior. Calls for deportation of foreigners, of people called foreigners. People can have also hold a German passport, like myself, for example. But in the eyes of several people, these people like me, we're still foreigners. And it is important to understand that in Germany, especially in the eastern part of Germany, the far-right parties, they are the leading parties, the strongest parties, like in the region of Thuringia or in Saxonia. The far-right AfD has over 35-38%. There are the first city mayors from the AfD, which is for Germany a sort of breaking a taboo. And in September this year, after already the European parliamentary elections in September this year, there are regional elections in this region, and AfD, far-right AfD, can be the party which forms the government. And here, on the French-German cooperation, one needs to say that it is also a different approach in both countries. Because in France, despite all the criticism towards Marine Le Pen, who is without any questions a far-right politician, they have cancelled their cooperation with AfD. AfD was too toxic for them. And that is also speaks something about the level of far-right course of AfD. I don't speak here about the links between some people from the AfD to Russian embassies or to Chinese embassies. We know that some employees of AfD in European Parliament have been accused of being a Chinese spy, like working as espionage agents for the Chinese government. It is a lot of questions which both state leaders need to discuss now in Berlin, of course.
And hopefully they will not remain unanswered. Now, let's perhaps leave the realm of now French-German relations for a moment. And lastly, let's move now to an urgent appeal by President Volodymyr Zelensky yesterday, that call to President Joe Biden and Xi Jinping of China, urging them to participate in peace summit scheduled in Switzerland for June. And this call actually comes also amid reports suggesting that now Vladimir Putin might be open to a ceasefire ceasefire and negotiations in Ukraine. So how likely do you think is it really that the US and China will participate in the peace summit in Switzerland, and what factors do you think might influence that decision?
Well, the peace summit is, of course, a thing for which many Ukrainians have their hopes, but I would not mix here the appearance of Vladimir Putin there and the peace summit with Joe Biden and President Xi, because for Vladimir Putin, the goals, his aims in Ukraine, they remain the same. His idea for what he wants to achieve in Ukraine is the same. It's capitulation of Ukraine. It's de facto demilitarization of Ukraine, destruction of Ukrainian army. Ukrainian army must be reduced to a sort of police force, no long-range weapons, only handguns, almost no tanks, almost no IFVs. Putin wants to make Ukraine absolutely vulnerable, and Putin wants to hold control over the territories he has occupied. He wants that Ukraine accepts it, which is absolutely unacceptable, of course. And the peace formula by President Zelensky is based on the norms of international law. And his peace formula is aimed on real ceasing of hostilities and fight. Like his suggestion says that the holistic system of human rights, of environmental rights, of norms of international law must be respected. Russia must remove their troops from the occupied regions. Environmental risks must be reduced, including nuclear risk, like seizing by the Russians of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, human rights, economic rights, reconstruction of Ukraine, etc. So it is how we can create a holistic way to the peaceful future, while the Russia's goal is to keep the regions Russia occupied, being occupied, to prepare for the next offensive and to disarm Ukraine and make Ukraine vulnerable for the next offensive in 25, 26, you name it. This appeal by President Zelensky, I want to stress it again, it was done after city of Kharkiv, which is over 1 million inhabitants city in the east of Ukraine, was brutally shelled for several days in a row, where supermarkets have been shelled, where a lot of civilians died. Like we know now that in the last bombardment of construction goods supermarket in Kharkiv, at least 16 people have been killed, civilians, employees and customers at that supermarket. Many people remain unidentified. Their bodies remain unidentified. We have seen terrible pictures of little kids being like providing samples of their DNA to police, because it's the only way to find if their father or mother is among the dead, because it's the only sample of DNA you can take from a direct relative. Heartbreaking pictures. And amid these pictures, President Zelensky gave his speech, and he has presented, for example, the destruction 2 days ago of a publishing house in Kharkiv, where books in Ukrainian language were published. Terrible pictures, terrible.
Right. So just let me ask you one last quick question. Speaking about the suffering of children, it is also happening in Gaza, and German Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck actually said that Israel's actions are incompatible with international law. And Germany has been also providing significant support to Israel. So I was wondering if there's a possible shift from supporting Israel to supporting Ukraine even more. What do you think? Could that happen?
Well, in Germany, we're facing electoral campaigns, as we have discussed already during this show today. And the Green Party clearly tries to find and Robert Habeck is a member of the Green Party, Vice Chancellor in Germany. They try to find the way how they stick to their principles of international law and support of Israel, and do not lose votes of those who stay on the side of Palestine, how they call it. We have seen several actions in Germany when people occupied. Also violently occupied universities in Germany, like Berlin Humboldt University, vandalizing it, like writing everywhere slogans in support of Palestine or even in support of Hamas terrorist attack, which was also the case. And the Greens, they want to, on one hand, not to solidarize with these actions. On another hand, they don't want to alienate these words, because many of these people who participate in these seizures of universities, etc., they are theoretically the Green voters, because they are also in pro-environment. They are more or less like left, and they would say, okay, we will not vote for the Conservatives or for others. We want to vote for Greens because Friday for Future, because the other environmental actions. These groups are not always, and not in most cases, but often overlap. So for the Greens, it's a tricky situation, and we have seen recently attempts also by the Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, on one hand, calling for ceasefire in Israel, between Israel and Hamas, and on another hand, saying that the attacks of the 7th October were a terrible act, which is right. But at the same time, she adds that this attack was also a terrible situation for Palestinians. We don't know if it was for many of them. And then she explains it was a terrible act for Palestinians because it led to Israel's land operation. So it's equilibrium, very complicated for the Greens, and they try to find ways how to stay on the fundament of international law, but not scare off their voters.
So I gather from what you're saying that it is a very difficult balancing act from what we're seeing. Sadly, the clock is working against us. Thank you so much, Sergej Sumlenny, for now sharing your insights with us here on TVP World.
Thank you so much.